blast off into 2025 at the Thai Grand Prix, with plenty of fans already among us to watch the early action as we ease your way into the new season with the class photos for 2025. My name is Lewis Sotheby. Matt Burt will be along a little bit later on. In the meantime, as we get ready to meet some of the new faces of Moto2 and Moto3, alongside me is Kiko Giles, who will be lending his voice to the Moto3 practice coverage this season. Elliot York is also standing by for us in pit lane to speak to some of the riders involved. Kiko, there is nothing quite like the feeling of a brand new season.
Oh, it does get the blood flowing, doesn't it? Absolutely. This year more than ever, I think. I know we say that most years in whatever we're doing, but really there is a hype about this year, right across all classes, right up in MotoGP, all the way through down to Moto3, and even some of the Talent Cups. There's a lot of new names, nationalities, flags that we're all going to have to learn, and for sure national anthems along the way as well. But to start in Thailand, Lewis, I think we all arrived yesterday, and Buriram is ready to host MotoGP's launch of 2025.
Yeah, of course, Bangkok already hosted the official launch of the new season back at following the pre-season test in Malaysia and preceding the test we had here at the Chang International Circuit. A roaring success that event was, but this is the official start of the new season and gives us an opportunity to meet some new faces and to adjust ourselves and acclimatise ourselves to some of the new colour schemes and new names in new surroundings for the new season. Moto3 then getting us underway, a class that always entertains and excites, and for the Moto3 field who are looking to claim title glory this season, they're all going to be able to find out just what a Moto3 class looks like without the all-conquering David Alonso in it.
I was doing some stats ahead of this round, and an interesting one was that after just 2 seasons of David Alonso winning, in which he won 14 races last year, Colombia is the 3rd most successful country in terms of race wins, on 18 in total, with only Spain and Italy ahead. So David Alonso is cleared off. Land of opportunity awaits for sure in Moto3, and there's so many fast rookies coming up. Lewis, we enjoyed the last round of Junior GP on that little midweek round over in Estoril at the end of the year last year, and the amount of names that have moved on up from there to here or via Red Bull rookies as well. Very, very exciting times for Moto3. It does feel like a real change of regard this year.
Yeah, the top 4 riders from last season's Moto3 World Championship, all having moved up on out of this class. David Alonso, Danny Holgado, Colin Vaya and Ivan Ortola, all Moto2 riders now, so we'll see them a little bit later in the afternoon, which leaves David Munoz as the highest placed rider from last season's Moto3 Championship still around, just ahead of a rider who we saw a moment ago, Adrian Fernandez, who stays at the Leopard Honda squad for this season. Once again this year it is going to be a head-to-head, a shootout between the KTMs and the Hondas. We're looking at one of the Honda riders there, the new bleach blonde locks of Nico Carraro, who is one of a number of riders who have changed manufacturers for this season. 3 riders in the field who were here last year have gone from Honda to KTM, and 3 have gone from KTM to Honda. Well, we mentioned David Munoz a moment ago. Surely he must be thinking championship this season, one of the favourites for the new season, and he's speaking to Elliot in pit lane.
Yeah, good on David. An impressive pre-season, the highest placed rider to return for 2025. How are you feeling ahead of race 1 here in Thailand?
Yeah, today is a new day for the DJR, and new objective for DJR also, new team, all new, and very good. Step by step, I working by step by step. DJR, I want to work along on the track. This is very important, and focus on me, on me, and also on my team. Thank you to everybody.
Cheers, David, and good luck for race 1 in the season.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks to David Munoz. And we spoke just before we threw down to Elliot there, Kiko, that he must be thinking championship. I think if David Munoz can calm down and turn some of those near-miss podiums into actual victories, a title challenge is certainly within him.
The thing with David is he looked at so many times from last year that it's going to be this weekend, it's going to happen, and then it just doesn't come to fruition. So he's got to run before, he's got to walk before he can run. He's been doing it the other way around, as I was just then for a moment. He's got to win. And as soon as, I feel like as soon as he gets that first win, he's going to be there. Similar for Adrian Fernandez. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of expectation. Both just need to do it methodically and take each race as it comes. You can't win everything on laps 1 and 2.
Yeah, Adrian Fernandez, who might well be the lead Honda competitor through this season. Here is Stefano Neppa, Sich 58 Squadra Honda rider for him. Now, as mentioned, 3 riders have gone from KTM to Honda for this season. We've already seen Carraro, Stefano Neppa, and Riccardo Rossi is the other. Rossi goes to the River Cold Snipers Honda squad for this season, and 3 have moved from Honda to KTM. Matteo Battelli, he's, of course, switched over to the MTA squad. Scott Ogden, who's now with the CIP Green Power squad. And Angel Piqueras, who moves from Leopard Honda to MT Helmets MSI. And he, Kiko, has instantly been installed as the bookies' pre-season title favourite.
And why wouldn't he be? There's only 3 winners on this grid after, of the 53 Grand Prix winners we've had in Moto3. And Angel Piqueras is one of them. Of course, he got that win there last year. He's got to be one of the favourites, as the bookies have been backing him. Don't forget, Dennis Foggia is back this year. Going to take him a bit of time now, I feel, to adapt. And then there's a whole host of riders that can win races. We spoke about 2 of them earlier in Munoz and in Fernandez. But there's a lot of new names. Max Quiles, we know Max Quiles for a long time. He's going to be right there. You've got to think that Luca Lanetta had that pace at times last year. He's going to be there. There's going to be so many. Joel Kelso, if he could go the other way and not fall back at the end of races and instead save himself and come forward at the end, you've got to think Joel Kelso's got a win in him. So, yes, Piqueras, yes, clearly the favourite. But it's not like David Alonso was the favourite last year. There's a lot more riders that are going to be having their say.
Well, certainly nobody expected David Alonso to dominate to the extent that he did, with an extraordinary streak of victories through to the end of the season. Once he won the championship, it was as if the pressure was released. In the end, Alonso ended the year with 7 consecutive victories. The last rider not named David Alonso to win a Moto3 race is actually Angel Piqueras with his victory at Misano last year. What kind of season can we expect from the M-Lab squad this season? They've got an all-new lineup from the start of last year, although, of course, Eddie O'Shea did compete in 5 races late last year. He's got a rookie teammate in the form of Marcos Uriarte to give us an idea of what we can expect from them. Their team manager, Michael Laverty, is with Elliot.
Yeah, it certainly is, Michael. Good to see you here in Thailand. Ready for race 1? How are the boys feeling?
Yeah, thank you. All good. Pre-season testing didn't exactly go to plan, but a new rider in Marcos adapted really quite fast to the Honda. I thought his first day in Portimao, he already looked like he understood the chassis and bike. Eddie had a few little crashes here and there, but overall it was quite positive. The first half of every practice session in Jerez, let's say, the guys were in and around the top 10, but then couldn't quite put those time attack laps together, so finished maybe a little bit further down the timesheet order than perhaps their race pace suggests. So overall, quite positive. We had the new engine from Honda on the last day. It's different. It seems a little better. We need a little more time here in Thailand with it, but yeah, atmosphere's good in the garage. We have a few new staff guys. Pepe's come across and was an ex-AO mechanic, so just have to get that team structure all together, gel over the first few rounds, but overall it's been positive.
What's Eddie been working? Obviously a tough start to his year last year with the injury, and then obviously the flyaway races. We'll just move over slightly so we can hear. What's Eddie been working on in pre-season? I think the front end I read about that he was working on quite a lot with the new Honda. How's it gone for Eddie?
Yeah, to be honest, Eddie was quite fortunate in a way that he had those late season races, so even though he's a rookie, he doesn't feel like a rookie. He's got experience here with the Buriram circuit, was able to go through testing. As I mentioned, the new crew were on his side, so gelling with those guys. And then when the new engine arrived in Jerez, it did change the bike a little bit. Honda brought us a new clutch. We started with that, and it actually completely changed how the bike worked on corner entry, somewhere where Eddie struggled a little bit last year. So getting that dialed in, and then for him and Marcos, actually, they were sort of both working a little bit too much on their own, rather than, we know in Moto3 the group scenario works so well for lap time. So I'm hoping this weekend the 2 riders can start working together, provide the slipstream effect all the way down to turn 2 and pull them back up to turn 4 can benefit a lot. So I think this weekend it's more moving into that Moto3 strategy, getting the lap times, making sure you've got the rhythm to be there. But overall, I think he's adapted well to. He's rode a Honda a long time in Junior GP. He'd been with their team in Junior GP previously, and then for not quite half a season, but quite a few rounds last year. So I think the adaptation phase is over, and he can actually start this season as a rookie with good experience under his belt, with a team he knows and a bike he knows, and hopefully it's not going to burst onto the scene this weekend. Gradually step our way there, and throughout the season, I think he can hopefully trouble the top 10.
That's good to hear. And I think a big story in 2025 is the new Honda. How much closer is it to the KTM, CF Motos, etc.? What's been the initial feedback from your riders and everyone in the paddock in Jerez about the new Honda?
Unfortunately, we only started with the new engine on the very last day of testing due to the first engines having slightly lower kilometres available. So we switched. We done 2 days with some new peripheral components and then the new engine on the last day, and it did change things. There's a little bit more torque, a bit more punch off the bottom, which was something I think KTM always had in their pocket last year over the Honda riders. Marcos' first comment when he got on the bike in Portimao was, chassis is good, front end feels good, but when you open the gas it feels a little flat in comparison to the KTM. So the first signs were promising that there's maybe a margin to go yet, but definitely one step closer to KTM and how it accelerates off the turn. But when you looked at the timesheets in Jerez, it still looked like KTM held a slight advantage across the board. But it was very new to all the teams, Leopard included, on the last day of testing to adapt to this new engine. This weekend in Buriram will get a little more experience. It's a evolution of the new engine that was brought to Sepang, which actually, as we've seen in that race, we had the Honda Team Asia bike with Furusato on the podium. You had Almanza leading the race, so there is potential in there, but we all the Honda teams will want to extract it as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Michael, appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and have a good race this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks to Elliot in pit lane. Yeah, in terms of the MLAV concern, of course, an all-British lineup at the start of last year with Scott Ogden and Josh Watley. Both have gone their separate ways for this season. New lineup with Eddie O'Shea going into his first full season in Moto3, partnered by Marcos Uriarte, one of a couple of Uriartes that are going to be Grand Prix racers long into the future. Brian Uriarte, who fought for the Red Bull Rookies Championship, will surely be on this grid in the future. 7 riders in all heading into their first full season in the class. O'Shea and Uriarte, 2 of them. We have 2 more at the Densi Boe squad. You can just see them on the middle row there, 3rd and 4th from the right. They are 2 native English speakers, one from South Africa, one from New Zealand. Ruche Moodley is the South African in question. South Africa now represented in all 3 Grand Prix classes, with the Binder brothers, of course, in Moto2 and MotoGP. And Cormac Buchanan, the first full-time Kiwi on a Grand Prix grid since our former colleague Simon Crafar, of course, now heads the FIM MotoGP stewards. Completing your rookie contingent for the season, Valentin Peroni, the Argentine for the Tech 3 squad, a winner in his final European Talent Cup outing late last year when myself and Kiko were there to watch in Estoril. We also have, of course, Guido Pini, who has got a little bit of injury concerns to occupy his mind coming into his rookie season after injury arguably cost him the Junior GP crown last season. We also have Max Keeles, who is not here. That is why you only see Dennis Foggia for the Aspar team on the front row of the photo. Keeles isn't old enough yet, so we'll see him for the first time in Austin in 2 races' time. And completing your rookie contingent, we have Alvaro Carpe, the 3rd rider now, 3rd in 3 years, to win both the FIM MotoGP Red Bull Rookies Cup and the Junior GP World Championship. In terms of which rookie we can expect the most from, very, very difficult to call, but as is so often the case, given the Road to MotoGP program, we're expecting a lot from plenty of them.
Yeah, I mean, where do you start with some of them names? I mean, Max Keeles, for me, even though he's not here, is going to be one of those stars. The amount of times he adapted what seemed like seamlessly in 2 of his European Talent Cup titles, then moving up to Moto3 in the Junior GP category as well. He was right there at the front, so I expect Keeles. Pini's interesting for me. He seems to be very, very fast, and don't forget, he's coming off the back of some very horrible injuries. I think he broke both of his legs before we even got underway here. So Guido Pini, quick in testing as well. He's had his moments of glory. Alvaro Carpe, another one who, we don't forget, made his appearance last year at the Solidarity Grand Prix right at the end. Didn't score points, didn't need to, because he's going to get a full crack at the whip this year. And he, for me, is one of those riders who let's just see how fast he's going to be at the end, particularly at the end of the year. Not quite David Alonso, I don't think, not quite like his first season, but he's going to be there.
Yeah, Carpe was super strong at the end of the Jerez 3-day test. Kalex also impressed during that. He's a feisty, fiery young competitor at the Aspar squad is Max Kalex. He's able to compete in this championship from the age of 17 because he was in the top 3 of the Junior GP World Championship last year and the Rookies Cup the year before that. Fortunately, though, he doesn't turn 17 until a couple of weeks from now, so he will just miss out on the opportunity to race in Argentina. We'll see him in Austin when he will partner a returnee to the class. Kiko referenced him a few moments ago. We welcome back a winner at this Grand Prix in Moto3 3 years ago in the form of Dennis Foggia. We'll discuss him shortly, but let's hear from one of our rookies. We alluded to him a moment ago. It's an all-rookie lineup at the Dempsey Racing Boe squad. Cormac Buchanan, joined by Ruche Moodley, and the South African is speaking out to Elliot.
Yeah, great to be here with Ruche. Ruche, just had the first opportunity. How is the feelings ahead of tomorrow, kickstarting your Moto3 career? I'm sure you're really excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get started here in Thailand. The track looks really nice. We went on a track walk and I love the fans around here. It's a great place, so can't wait to get started tomorrow.
How did testing go? First time on a proper Moto3 bike in Jerez with all the riders you're going to be facing. How was it over in Jerez?
Yeah, it was a lot of learning because the bike's completely different and the way you have to ride it's completely different also. So we improved step by step, and at the end we closed the gap, which was the only goal. And so I'm feeling really confident coming into the weekend.
Great to chat to you, Ruche, and huge good luck to you this weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks to Ruche Moodley. We wish him well on his Grand Prix debut this weekend. It would be remiss of us, actually, as we mentioned a moment ago, riders not here. Max Kalex not here due to the age limit. We should also send our best wishes to 2 riders who are missing this weekend through injury and are replaced this weekend, but replaced by riders who won't be full-time, so weren't in the photograph that you just saw being taken. One of them is at CIP Green Power, Noah Detwiler, out due to a fractured wrist, which he sustained at the Jerez test last week. Adrian Cruces, another impressive young Spanish rider from Junior GP, is in for him this weekend and potentially in the next round 2 in Argentina. And we also send our best wishes to the recovering Jacob Ralston, who suffered a horrendous crash in training at Jerez back in January. He's replaced this weekend and for the foreseeable future by Joel Esteban, Aspar rider of last season. But Ralston suffered a fractured and displaced C3 vertebra in his neck. So, understandably, that is not an injury that you can recover from quickly. And Ralston is on his way to recovery. We hope to see him. He's hoping to be back in time for the 3rd round in Austin. Well, so much of the Thai interest this weekend, this is the Thai Grand Prix, is on Somkiat Chantra making his MotoGP debut this weekend. But don't forget Tachikon Bawazri heading into his 2nd full season in Moto3. Let's get his thoughts ahead of his 2nd full season and his home Grand Prix with Elliot.
Yeah, exactly that. Tachikon, great to be with you here. Home GP to start this season. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, I'm always excited to back to home, and also it's my home race also, and also it's the first race. It's so important for me. Yeah, I'm so happy to back home and always excited. Yes, I'm ready for this weekend, and I will push hard for get a good result for this week.
How did testing go here in Jerez? It looks like you made a good step compared to last year.
Yeah, also in the test I feel a little bit improved from last year. It's 2.5 seconds, and also everyone also improved, but the gap is more close, and for me it's so good feeling for the test. Also we keep this motivated for this test also.
Great to speak to you, Tachikon. Have a great weekend, home GP. Enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, there is plenty of branding around the circuit in support of Tachikon Bawazri. In addition, of course, to Somkiat Chantra, who we'll see a little bit later on in the afternoon. So as we mentioned a few moments ago, before we threw down to Elliot in pit lane, Dennis Foggia is a rider who many will be expecting a title challenge from this year. Of course, he has fought for the Moto3 title before, agonisingly close in 2021 up against Pedro Acosta, and also fought for the title deep into the 2022 season. Stepping into the team and the spot left occupied by the reigning champion, David Alonso. So big shoes to fill. And it appears, certainly from what we've seen in testing, as if the adaptation back to Moto3 has been a slow process so far for the Rocket, Dennis Foggia.
Yeah, it was going to be as well. I think he's had a couple of years now in Moto2. The way you ride that bike's going to be completely different. He's obviously come back. At least he's coming back at a circuit he's won on. I think his first race win actually came here. His first podium, I beg your pardon.
His last race win came here.
That's it. I knew I was right there somewhere. But no, his first career podium in 2018, that came here. So happy memories. And of course, I said about the 3 race winners, he, by nature, the fact that he was in the class for so long before, is the rider with the most wins. 10 of those, 23 podiums in the class as well. So Dennis Foggia, he's no slouch, but hoping to use his experience, I think, in 2025. And actually, if he can just get 1 or 2 results, hopefully his confidence won't be as hammered as it was during his Moto2 days, because it really did take a battering.
Yeah, he really did find the going tough in Moto2 at Italtrans. He's been replaced by an exciting rider in Moto2 who we'll speak about shortly as the Moto2 riders make their way out. Here is the Rivercold Cupron Snipers pairing for the new season, the 54 of Riccardo Rossi and the number 10, you can see there on the right-hand side of it, Nico Carraro, who has now covered those bleach blonde locks with a baseball cap.
Thankfully.
And as far as Riccardo Rossi is concerned, it's a bit of a put-up or shut-up year for the number 54. It's now his 7th season in Moto3. And it's now the 4th time he's changed manufacturers. When you go through Rossi's career progression in Moto3, he's got Honda, KTM, KTM, Honda, Honda, KTM, and now back to Honda, looking for a formula that finally works.
Well, maybe in another couple of years, or you've changed back to Honda again. But no, back to KTM, sorry. Yeah, Ricky Rossi, I mean, he struggled last year. Only 7 races where he scored points. He didn't finish in 7 races, so really a year that he was on the other side of what he'd like in terms of a rider's peak. So, you know, you want to be on the ascendancy, and Ricky Rossi, I think it just fell off a little bit last year. His worst season since 2021, but he has been a regular in the top 10s. Out of all the races he started, 17 of them have been finished in the top 10, majority in 2023. So hopefully he can come back to that kind of form this year.
Yeah, 110 Grand Prix starts to his name now, Riccardo Rossi, 22-year-old Italian, and another rider with plenty of experience to his name, 60 Grand Prix, and of course the most recent of them here. He started from pole position. What can we expect from Joel Kelso with the Level Up MTA squad in 2025? The Aussie is speaking now to El.
Yeah, he is. Joel, great to speak to you, mate. How was testing? You looked right up there on the time sheets. Looked like you were comfortable in your new team.
Yeah, mate. Testing went pretty smoothly. We were quite fast, which is good from the very beginning. I mean, you always want that when you come into the first test of the year. And yeah, no, I felt well from the beginning with the team and the bike. And yeah, the times came quite easy. So yeah, let's see here. Hopefully we can replicate that.
We know you like it here. How are you feeling ahead of round 1? Confident you can challenge for the podium and victory from the off?
Yeah, pretty confident, mate. We enjoy this track, so hopefully we can get off to a good start tomorrow, pump in some good laps and just stay consistent, and then yeah, see how we end up at the end of the weekend. But definitely want to be fighting for that podium for sure.
What's the new bike been like just quickly in Jerez? Did it feel much different? What new parts have you been able to test?
Yeah, there was a few new components we had to get a bit used to, and then by the final day though we started to feel more and more comfortable, and yeah, we're then at the end the bike didn't change much from last year to this year, just some small things, and at the end it's quite easy now to on the last day after 4 days of riding, maybe 200 laps or so, you get quite used to it.
Cheers, Joel. Appreciate your time and have a good weekend.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, he finally got himself a Tissot watch for a pole position here back in the autumn of last year. He now wants some podium Prosecco to add to that. Does have a sole podium back at home in Australia in the wet in 2023, but hasn't stood on a podium beside that. Kelso will be looking to change that this year, because as we mentioned earlier on, it wasn't uncommon to see him at the front of races last year. He led 5 Grand Prix races last year, but ultimately could not convert that into podiums in any of them, having secured his spot on the grid very early last year. He was signed up right at the beginning of last season by the MTA squad for 2025. Kelso, one of those who will be seeing the vacuum of the top 4 of last year moving out of the class as a real opportunity for him.
You've got to think he's going to win a race this year. I mean, Joel Kelso, he was close anyway. He was right in the group with the likes of David Alonso right the way through last year. So you've got to think, by just the nature of the way he was last year, he'll be on it this year. Then again, it can go pear-shaped. When we talked about Ricky Rossi last year, we thought he was on the ascendancy, and it turned out he wasn't. But I think Joel Kelso, if he can keep it clean, bag some solid results early on, I think he's going to be one to watch. And another one to watch, if I may, I spoke to him earlier, Tayo Furusato. It's coming, I think, is how we can describe that. Tayo Furusato has had 4 podiums. None of them have been a win, but with that kind of open goal this year, there isn't one rider who's being touted as the absolute clear-cut dominant. You know, yes, OK, Angel Piqueras should be the rider to beat, but it's, as I already said, not going to be like it was with David Alonso. So those 2 riders for me, Joel Kelso and Tayo Furusato, you've got to think are going to do not damage, but they're going to do well and get more than 1 win on the board.
There's another rider there we saw trudging up pit lane who will be eyeing victories, plural, this year. Jose Antonio Rueda, who did take a victory in Aragon last year, but couldn't add to that as we go through the year. He's another who will surely be eyeing up the championship this season. Let's turn our attention then to Moto2, an intermediate class which was unpredictable to say the least last year. The first Moto2 season, of course, with the Pirelli tyres underneath these motorcycles, and boy did that spice up the racing. The numbers don't quite do justice as to how unpredictable Moto2 was last year. Over the course of the year, we had 9 different winners, 18 different riders stood on a podium last season in Moto2. And we had brand new podium finishes right the way through to the final race of the season when Diogo Moreira took his first podium to secure the Rookie of the Year prize. 10 riders took a pole position. Aaron Canet was top in both wins and poles last season, and in laps led as well, but none of those were enough to earn him the championship. That went the way of Ai Ogura, who moves up into MotoGP, one of 3 riders departing Moto2 up towards MotoGP for this season, leaving last year's top rookie looking to try and move into their spot. Diogo Moreira, of course, will already be looking towards an upcoming Brazilian Grand Prix in the near future. After that was announced in the off-season, we'll be looking forward to heading to Brazil, we hope, next year. Diogo Moreira, one of a few riders who've caught the eye in winter testing so far.
And why not? I mean, he finished last year so well with that podium. You've got to think Diogo Moreira, if he can keep it clean, that's the important thing. He's got the pace, he's got all the gear. He just needs a few ideas in the first races. Don't forget Argentina back. We didn't go last year, so he's going to have to learn there. He's got to get points on the board here. It's not about winning everything, it's about getting the points bagged when it matters. I think Moreira is going to be one of those riders who is very, very fast, but he can't make mistakes early. If he can be fast, bag podiums, or we're in for a weapon in the second half of the year. And if he can do that, he's done a great job.
Yeah, common trend last year for Diogo Moreira was that he was super strong over 1 lap, super strong in qualifying trim and early in races, but did fade a little bit as Grand Prix went on. He did put that right, though, in the final race of last year in Barcelona, which did secure him that Rookie of the Year crown. We saw a rather relaxed Aaron Canet moments ago in pit lane, as we see a former Moto2 world champion in the form of Pedro Acosta. But of course, Aaron Canet, who looks very relaxed there in pit lane, will be hoping to become the next Moto2 world champion. Well, we've already discussed Diogo Moreira. Hopes high for the Brazilian in his sophomore season in Moto2. Let's hear it from the man himself with Elliot.
Yeah, he is down here with Diogo on the grids. Diogo, hopes are high for you this year from outside. How are you feeling after testing coming into round 1?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very happy. We make, I think, a good test. We try something new for next year. So I'm excited. So let's see if we can start well, and let's see this weekend.
What's the main thing you're looking for this year compared to last year for improve to enable you to fight at the front from race to race?
I think we need to understand the pace for the race, because the lap time we have, so we need to keep working on that pace, and let's see if I can do it. But yeah, I'm excited, and let's see.
Difficult to say, obviously, without turning a wheel in anger here, but what are your expectations for round 1? Obviously, you want to win the race, but what would you be happy with?
I think we need to fight for top 5, and if I was there, will be good. And yeah, I'm excited to start, and this year I think will be good.
Cheers, Diogo, for your time, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to what Diogo Moreira can do this year. And we're also excited, while we're at it, talking the Italtrans squad, Kiko, as to what his teammate might do. Plenty of rookies in Moto2 this year. Many, of course, up from Moto3, and we'll no doubt discuss those as we go through the broadcast. But a rookie also, the reigning Supersport World Champion, no less, Adrian Huertas, who took that crown last season pretty comfortably, it has to be said, in the end for the Aruba Ducati squad. And looks like he's taken to Moto2 machinery like a duck to water so far.
Very fast in the test, Lewis, got to say, up inside the top 10. I know Adrian pretty well because I was over in Superbike as well, so we've kind of made the jump the same year. Obviously, it's a bit more difficult than my one. But no, Adrian's a very solid guy, wants the bikes working for him. He's a rider that has got a lot of natural talent, but also a rider that, when it feels good, can make it work. He doesn't necessarily grab it by the scruff of the neck. He needs to be methodical about it, and then when it's all in tune, he's something to keep an eye on. So, yeah, I'm excited for Italtrans this year. I mean, Diogo Moreira on its own is always going to be exciting, but for Adrian Huertas to come in and what it seemingly looks like he's on it already, give him time. He's obviously never been here. He'll have never been to Argentina, Cota, or even Losail. So the first 4 rounds, massively learning. But if he can get points in them, then I think by the time we get to Europe, we can see an Adrian Huertas at the front.
It's a good point you make with Huertas, that he'll be starting his Moto2 rookie season on tracks that he's not so familiar with. The private testing in Portimao and the official testing in Jerez, both are circuits that Huertas will know very well from his Supersport and Supersport 300 days. Of course, champion in both of those classes. Here is Joe Roberts, who we're delighted to see back in Moto2 action. Last time we saw Joe Roberts ride a Moto2 bike in anger, you have to go all the way back to the Australian Grand Prix weekend late last year, when he suffered that nasty injury in free practice in a rather pointless cold and wet practice session. Fortunately, he suffered that injury to his wrist, which has seen Roberts fall to a position in the championship last year which didn't really reflect the work that he put in. Roberts 9th in the championship at the end of last season, but he was a title contender up until his injury. And as far as title contenders are concerned, this Moto2 class could have any one of 5 or 6 or even more. As mentioned, there were so many winners over the course of last season. We saw Barry Baltus there, who was very strong in pre-season testing. But it is so good to welcome back Joe Roberts to Moto2, and ready to speak to him pit lane is our own Elliot.
It is great to see him back. Yeah, Joe, great to see you back. How are you feeling after testing and coming into round 1? Obviously missed a couple of races at the end of last year, so how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely pretty rusty in Jerez. Sat around. It's not a lot you can do with a wrist injury, man. I found that out pretty quickly. I thought, oh, nice break, be at home with family, and then can't do shit. So, no, it's really nice to be back. It's good to be back in the racing environment. I was getting a little bit stir crazy at home, so yeah, I mean, the test was not great for us, but at the same time we didn't test in Portugal, so we're kind of on the back foot compared to everyone else, and there are some differences in the bike this year as well as the tire, so it's definitely blowing off the cobwebs, but also understanding a little bit what this new bike is and this new way to ride. And they went freaking quick, man. So yeah, we got some catching up to do, but just come out here, and it's always been an interesting track. So I don't know how much Jerez is going to carry over to here, but I'm excited.
Any expectations coming into this weekend, or are you just hitting the track, see where you are, and go from there?
Honestly, I was struggling a little bit with my wrist still in Jerez, so I just want to come here and try to get each day just work on getting a good pace again. And yeah, I don't know if I put like a number in my head, but let's just say it's a good outcome. That's what we're looking for, wherever that means.
Cheers for your time, Joe. Appreciate it. I'll let you go now, and have a good weekend.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, it's good to see Joe Roberts back. We welcome him back to Moto2. An unchanged lineup for the American racing team this year. You can see one or two riders who perhaps are in different colours to what you're used to. Darren Binder there, who's essentially swapped places with the rider just to the left as you look, Manu Gonzalez, who has swapped Grassini for the Intact GP squad. Darren Binder has gone in the other direction. Here is Ethan Guevara, who has also switched teams for this season, and a new name, new colours for Moto2, although a very familiar name if you're MotoGP fans exclusively. The Pramac squad have extended their involvement from MotoGP into Moto2. The Blue Crew Pramac Yamaha Moto2 team. And what a strong lineup they've got. Ethan Guevara, former Moto3 world champion and podium finisher in Malaysia last year. Joining him, Tony Arbolino, former winner here, of course, in Moto2 and a former world championship runner-up. Taking the Boscuro contingent up to 8 for this season with the MSI squad, which are now known as QJ Motor Frinsa MSI. I'm sure I'll call them MT Helmets MSI a few times through the season. They are still called that in Moto3, is not to confuse the matter any further. So they're still on the Boscoscuros, as are, of course, the speed-up team with Alonso Lopez and Celestino Vietti, the Pramac squad, and Elf Mark VDS as well, with Philip Salach and Jake Dixon. Clearly seeing what MT Helmets MSI did last season, Kiko, and saying, I want a Boscoscuro in my box.
But let's just hope they haven't done it all too soon, because don't forget, at the test, Kalex looked like they'd really made a step forward and they've actually got a new bike. So I wouldn't... Let's wait and see, because we haven't even had track action yet properly. The Boscoscuro was very, very fast last year. But let's wait and see to see where they all stack up once we... Not so much over here and out in Argentina, but once we're back in Europe. Just on Joe Roberts speaking to Elliot, I hope his family weren't listening then, because he was very critical. Joe Roberts, please have some respect, man.
Yeah, apologies for his wonderful flowery use of the English language that you heard a moment ago as well. Here is Celestino Vietti, part of that group of 8 this season, who are now on the Boscoscuros. And Celestino Vietti, if the Boscoscuro does work as well as it did last season, he will be in the title conversation, make no mistake about that. But so much of the intrigue this year, Kiko, in Moto2 is about the rookies, in particular those that have moved up from Moto3. The top 4 riders in the Moto3 World Championship of last season are now up in Moto2. And so many must be asking, given how dominant he was in the Moto3 class, can David Alonso, right on cue here on screen, translate his dominance in Moto3 to Moto2?
He came into the testing injured, so we can't read too much into testing, that shoulder dislocation. Now, keep an eye on him, though, because he did start to figure it out on the second half of day 2 at the Jerez test, and particularly on day 3, even if he was a little bit further down the times. But I'm very hopeful for David Alonso this year, and I do think it will be a matter of time until we see him right at the top of the timesheets in Moto2, because for sure he's got what it takes. You don't win 14 races in a year for nothing.
He is too smart not to figure this out. He is such a clever, canny operator. We saw that with his racecraft in Moto3. He didn't exactly win all of his 14 races by a country mile. In fact, he won most of them by mere hundredths or tenths of a second, but he was so strong late in races. He just knew where to be and when to be there, and in the end that saw David Alonso basically rip up the record books in Moto3 terms and in lightweight class terms last season. As far as the rookie group up from Moto3 are concerned, arguably he's been outshone so far by his teammate Danny Holgado. As Kiko outlined, there are reasons for Alonso perhaps having a steady start to life in Moto2. He did dislocate his shoulder shortly before testing got underway, but Holgado has made a strong start to life in Moto2, joined of course by Colin Vaya, who was 3rd in the Moto3 Championship last season, and typically Dutch, he is very tall, so expect him to take to Moto2 relatively seamlessly. And Ivan Ortola as well, who of course moves into the MSI squad, having ridden for them in Moto3 last season. He moves into the QJ Motor Frinsa MSI squad this season, although it is also worth pointing out his regular teammate Sergio Garcia not here through injury. Yeah,
a bit of a disaster for Garcia coming into 2025, but of those rookies, yeah, Danny Holgado, I've got to say, very impressive during testing. Easy to forget that he was actually the rider who really pushed David Alonso and somehow kept that title fight alive for so long, because he really didn't want to give up. And then, yeah, there's a whole host of rookies. We touched on Adrian Huertas. I don't think anyone expected Adrian Huertas to be quite that competitive. Then you've got all the riders that change bikes. As you say, Lewis, there's a lot of riders now moving back onto Kalex or over to Boscoscuro. So there's a lot of reason for quite a lot of upset, really, in Moto2 this year. Aaron Canet obviously has got to be the one rider, if you were to put money anywhere, who, yeah, maybe on paper looks good. But don't forget Manuel Gonzalez as well. Gonzalez really, and I've said this to a lot of us away from the comms box, is a bit of my dark horse for this year. I've got to say, I'm really, really excited to see how Gonzalez goes, and he's been very fast in testing too.
Yeah, Canet, Baltus and Gonzalez were your top 3 at the end of the official test in Jerez. Barry Baltus has also looked very good through testing so far. He certainly looks to be at home at the Fantic squad this season. But Gonzalez, it's remarkable to say this about a rider 3rd in the World Championship, but he still somehow flew under the radar for a lot of last season, did Gonzalez. Took that solitary Grand Prix win, of course, at the Japanese Grand Prix when his inspired decision to take that race with slick tyres earned him victory on the very day that Ayagura took a 2nd place, which effectively wraps up the championship for him. But so many experienced names in this Moto2 class. You just need to look at the riders who won races last season. Canet is still around, so too Celestino Vietti. Garcia, when he returns from injury, will be back with us once again this season. We also, of course, keep Jake Dixon in the Moto2 class, although as mentioned, he does change manufacturers in terms of motorcycles as well as teams. He moves across from Aspar to Mark VDS and from Kalex to Boscuro. Alonso, Lopez, Joe Roberts and the aforementioned Gonzalez, all winners looking to turn victories into a championship tilt this year. And
don't forget Dennis Onchu. I can't believe we've done it about 15 minutes and we haven't mentioned him once. Sometimes Lewis changes and what's key, staying the same can help. And Dennis Onchu, for sure, in testing, again, quick, and I said it 3 or 4 times now, we can't read everything into testing, but what we can do is get a very good idea of who's made steps, and Dennis Onchu, for me, well worthy to keep an eye on, particularly in these odd flyaway rounds that we have at the start of the year. It's a good chance to land a surprise.
Yeah, Dennis Onchu's been looking good so far as we've gone through the winter. Of course, it's easy to forget the injury interruption to his rookie Moto2 campaign last year. Certainly did put Dennis Onchu on his back foot. He made a real mess of his left radius and scaphoid and returned post-summer break. Took him a couple of rounds to get himself back into the swing of things, but once he did, he was on the podium, wasn't he, in Aragon last year. Not a rider prepared to be pushed around. Another name that we should draw your attention to, you just saw him there, he's right on the extreme right of picture. A returnee to the paddock, but another Moto2 rookie, Yuki Kuni, who we did see in Moto3, as mentioned, for a couple of seasons in the sort of tail end of the last decade. Real tall order for Kuni, though, this season, of course, having spent much of his time in the intervening period since he was last in this paddock in the Asia Road Racing Championship, where he was a champion at Superbike level last year. But Moto2, the cutthroat intermediate class of Grand Prix racing, an entirely different kettle of fish.
The only good thing is his Moto2 debut comes at the circuit where he did win the championship last year, so happy memories. But for Yuki Kuni, spoke with him earlier, actually, and there is reasonable optimism. I mean, don't forget, it's a first race in Moto2. There are plenty of riders that are going to be a lot further up the pecking order. But that means there's a lot of riders you can learn from. And Yuki Kuni will be one of those riders, I'm fairly sure, that will figure it out. It just more depends on how long it'll take him. But a good place to make your debut.
Yeah, team that you perhaps shouldn't expect too much too soon from, the Idemitsu Honda Team Asia squad. Kuni, of course, learning the class, and his teammate just to the left of him as we look, Mario Aggi. He did have a difficult and disrupted testing program, dislocated his shoulder during the Jerez test, which forced him to call that test a day a little bit early. But there is your class of Moto2 for this season. Which of these will be clinching title glory and potentially booking their place into the MotoGP class in the future? It's a difficult season to potentially earn a MotoGP spot because it's not really a big contract year in MotoGP. So many are signed up for the next couple of years. But one of these riders on your picture, unless of course it's Sergio Garcia, who's currently sitting at home watching, will be your Moto2 world champion. Game face on already for Dennis Onchu, who's already looking to put the fear of God into his Moto2 rivals before they've even gone to the racetrack.
Either that or he's looking to see how long he's got to look at cameras for.
It is hot out there.
It's particularly in leathers. Just worth mentioning, you touched on a point about contracts there, Lewis. Don't forget, it doesn't have to be a contract year. Fermin Aldeguer is in MotoGP, having signed really early for that MotoGP Ducati deal. And we have seen in recent years, contracts are with clauses. You can break contracts. Obviously, that's not the done way of doing things, but it is possible. And if you have a stellar season, there's no reason why, if you're not in the shop window for next year because everything's taken, you can be there in 2027, and that's not a bad year to come into MotoGP with a regs change.
Yeah, of course, the switch to 850cc for 2027. And it is going to be an exciting season, a really unpredictable season once again in Moto2. We're expecting lap records to be smashed once again as we go through the season, with Pirelli introducing the super soft SCX tyre. We're going to see that later in the season. Certainly an indication of what we saw from Jerez in testing last week. They were already a second under the all-time lap record at the Andalusian circuit. So we're expecting fast lap times. We're expecting exciting Grand Prix racing. As mentioned, the introduction of Pirelli really did spice up the Moto2 action. And the only thing to do now for this group is to race. And the baby-faced smile of David Alonso. Just how long will it be until he figures this Moto2 class out? Smashed records in Moto3. What can he now do in Moto2? There is the Colombian just on your picture now with his teammate at Aspar, Dani Holgado, the top 2 riders in the Moto3 World Championship, moving up together with Aspar.
Just a quick one on that as well. A new challenge for the team. They've got 2 rookies to work with, so expectations, whilst they will be high, particularly with David Alonso, you have got to be slightly more measured and perhaps understanding that these guys are still learning.
Let's head down to pit lane then. As mentioned earlier on, it's a change of teams and a change of chassis for Jake Dixon. He swaps Aspar and Kalex for Mark Vinales and Boscuro. He's also talking to Elliot.
Yeah, Jake, changed the plenty, new team, new bike. How was testing and how are you feeling ahead of round 1?
Yeah, really good, to be fair. Really enjoyed the 5 days, obviously with the new team. It's never quite long enough, as everyone well knows. But yeah, overall the Mark VDS team's great. And I'm really enjoying riding the Boscuro.
How much of a change has it been from Boscuro to Kalex? I think that's a question not many of us know. How can you answer that?
Yeah, it's like anything. It always takes time. I think it will take a couple of races to really understand where we're at and keep developing throughout the year. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a really good place. Not necessarily the fastest right now, but in a good place mentally, and can't wait to get started.
Cheers, Jake, for your time and have a good weekend.
Cheers, thank you. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks to Jake Dixon, who, of course, has to learn all over again, having switched from Kalex to Boscuro, as we look at a pair of experienced Italians who know what it takes to win in Moto2. Celestino Vietti and Tony Arbolino, who have had very contrasting winter programs. Vietti looks like he's made a decent adaptation to Boscuro. Tony Arbolino, less so.
Yeah, less so. I think Tony Arbolino's still trying to work out that Blue Crew Pramac Yamaha for sure. For Vietti, yes, the adaptation has gone well, but it's something I said earlier, you just hope that not everyone's moved too quickly to Boscuro. I mean, unless you're in Boscuro and it's great for business, but you genuinely, it's very easy to go off what Ayagura did last year and go, oh yeah, I'll have some of that. But without thinking, it's a lot to do to change chassis, and then you put in a few rookies as well, and that is not going to be plain sailing, and we've seen that in testing. Kalex as well. Out of the hands of Boscuro, their rivals are making a step, and that bike now looks again like the package to be on. We'll have to wait and see. We could be talking absolute nonsense, but we haven't seen any track action this year. But at the moment, what we can go off from Kalex is that, yeah, they've reasserted themselves at the front.
Yeah, they've not taken defeat in the Riders' Championship, at least last year, lying down, although they did win the Constructors' Crown once again, continuing their decade of dominance in the Moto2 class. And as far as Jake Dixon is concerned, not only is it team and chassis, but also suspension he's changing this year. Of course, famously last year, the Pira Mobility Group backed teams ran the WP suspension. Of course, now with the Boscuro underneath him, Jake Dixon has switched back to Öhlins for this year. And for Jake Dixon, it felt, didn't it, partway through last year, as if a title challenge was coming for Dixon when he took those victories in the late summer months, 2 in 3, didn't he? Silverstone and Aragon before that championship challenge petered out somewhat. He's past a century of Grand Prix races now, is the Brit, and he's proven he can win. He now wants to translate that into a genuine title push, and he's with a team that certainly knows what it takes to win in Moto2.
Oh yes, there are many world championships over there in the Mark VDS squad, so I've got no question about that, and no question about Jake Dixon. But it's all that readaptation stuff again. There's so many changes right and up and down the paddock in every class, let's be honest. So Moto2 is not just on its own here, but Jake Dixon, I think he'll work it out. And okay, the Boscuro in the test didn't seem too comfortable, but Dixon wasn't a poor one in terms of his actual times. He seemed to be working out at his own pace, and I think by the time we get to mid-season, Jake will be there, and probably his teammate too, Salach.
Yeah, here he is, Philip Salach, who, of course, likewise is switching to Boscuro with Jake Dixon, and, of course, for Philip, who's just sharing an embrace there with his new teammate. Of course, a return home too for Philip this year as MotoGP returns to the awesome Autodromo Brno this season. Of course, 22 rounds in this 2024-25. You know, made that mistake eventually. MotoGP World Championship, and just before the summer break, a return to Brno, a circuit I've never been to before. How excited are you to be heading to Brno?
Oh, I can't wait. And are we talking about the track or the city? That's important, because if you want a drink at the end of the day, I think Brno's the place to be. As for me, as a track, yeah, Brno, absolutely fantastic. I think we're ready just to head down to pit lane. It's Tony Arbolino with L.
Yeah, got Tony Arbolino with us. Tony, great to see you, just chatting with a couple of team members at the minute. Tony, sorry to interrupt. Tony, good to see you. How's testing been? Obviously, new team, new bike to get used to. How was it in Jerez?
Yeah, man, yeah. Test was tough. New bike, new team, new stuffs. Difficult to say. I mean, I like the bike. I like pretty much the bike. The only thing, you need to learn a lot and change a lot the style of riding. So that's the most important thing you need to do on the bike. But on top of the bike, you feel good. I can tell you, man. But lap time still not coming. But in Jerez, but here it will be a different story. So hot conditions. So I think will be crucial for us to understand really well the condition and the bike. We will not touch a lot this weekend on the bike, because we can see that the window of changing the things is so small, so you cannot change a lot of things that the bike change really a lot. And if you are in a more or less good way, it's better for you to don't change that much. So we keep going on the way that we found more or less good, and let's see.
Tony, top man, have a good weekend.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Tony Arbolino in pre-season testing was occupying the bottom end of the timesheet. He spoke of massive front chatter on that Boscuro as the source of a lot of his problems. Found himself quite a long way behind his teammate for this year, Ethan Guevara. We're touching on that Pramac team for this season. I was at the team launch for Yamaha and its collective MotoGP and Moto2 squads in Kuala Lumpur at the end of January, which included both their MotoGP concerns, Monster Energy Yamaha and Pramac Yamaha, and their Pramac Moto2 squad, which is headed up and managed by a former Moto2 Grand Prix winner in his own right, Alex De Angelis, who's the team manager of that squad, with Gino Borsoi focusing a lot of his attention, of course, on their MotoGP squad. And both of those riders, Guevara and Arbolino, of course, long-term picture, they must be thinking a team like that, given that it's part of the Yamaha program, it's part of the pathway in theory up to MotoGP, must be thinking, if we can really click with this Boscuro and really impress within this team, impress Yamaha, a MotoGP spot could be ours if we play our cards right in the future.
Playing your cards right might be the way for Tony Arbolino, I'm afraid. But no, of course, Ethan Guevara...
That's what the team's there for.
It is exactly what the team's there for. I think for Ethan, he's had a couple of... he never really came to fruition when he came up to Moto2 for the first time. So it's a big year for him in many ways, and I hope it works for him. Tony Arbolino's got all that experience in Moto2 now, and maybe the adaptation is just taking longer. When it clicks, it's going to really click, and I really hope so for Tony Arbolino. It just didn't seem that way in testing, but again, testing's testing. He could roll out here tomorrow morning and be on it, and that's the unpredictable nature, actually, of Moto2. Just to digress a slight bit, is that really there is no clear indication this year of what's going to work and who's going to perform, because it could be upside down by the time we're at round 5 in Jerez. Yeah,
different circuits, different weather conditions, different characteristics really can turn this Moto2 class on its head, given how close it is. Looking at the testing in Jerez, the top 17 riders were covered by less than a second. That is Moto2 in a nutshell. And you saw Guevara there on screen, the teammate to Tony Arbolino, and this is a big year. Couldn't agree more for Arbolino and Guevara. Guevara taking that podium in Malaysia, assisted in somewhat by the error by his team mate Jake Dixon late on, although Jake Dixon certainly had some extenuating circumstances for that. Well, we can see both of the Aspar rookies on screen. We can now hear from one of them, the reigning record-breaking Moto3 world champion, now a Moto2 rookie, David Alonso is with El.
Yeah, he is. David, great to see you here on the Moto2 class grid. How are you feeling ahead of your first season in Moto2? Now you're here and ready for it.
Yeah, excited. First day of school, new class with the big boys and good. Let's enjoy the start of the season.
We'll jump in for the moment. We're having some issues hearing Elliot, unfortunately, in pit lane. Certainly hope that's not affecting your enjoyment of what you're seeing. But David Alonso, the Moto3 world champion, inevitable given how dominant he was in Moto3, the expectations high that he's going to move into this Moto2 class and immediately be up at the front. But it's very difficult to truly put into context the step between Moto3 and Moto2. It's probably the most difficult step of any of the classes we have in this paddock, because the gap between power, of course, the different characteristics of the motorcycles, the physicality involved, Moto3 to Moto2 is so tough.
It's a big step. It used to be one that was difficult anyway. How many riders did we see used to come up for Moto3 after all the success and move on to Moto2, and it would be very tough, very limited, and that gap's only got bigger since the introduction of the Triumph engine a few years ago. So the gap is now even bigger. It's even more power to get used to, but it does put Moto2 a little bit closer to MotoGP in terms of that power aspect. But don't forget, Moto2, very tricky class. In general, it can take a couple of years. I mean, Ethan Guevara did not win the Moto3 title with ease. Sorry, did not win it in a close call. He won it with relative ease, and he struggled.
He found it very difficult. Guevara, I think ultimately for him, he didn't quite grasp the physicality, the difficulty moving up from Moto3 to Moto2. Immediately had issues with arm pump at the start of his season. He had some triangular ligament damage in his wrist at the start of his Moto2 rookie season as well. And certainly, as we went into last season, the back end of last season, he figured it out, but it did take its sweet time. We saw Alex Escreech there for the forward team. They look like they've made something of a step this season, which might well bring them into the midfield in Moto2. You can see him sharing a little chat there with his very close friend. They are as close as brothers, Alex Escreech and Pedro Acosta. Acosta, as mentioned, a former Moto2 champion himself. Be hoping to perhaps make a step of himself in this MotoGP season that we're going to be looking ahead to very shortly. But Moto2 are all set to go. They will be out on circuit tomorrow for their first track action of the new season. So excited to get this season underway. In terms of picking a champion, Kiko, for this season in Moto2, it's as difficult a class as any to pick a champion, but I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to have a go anyway.
Right, I'm off now. Very difficult. If you want a dark horse, I am going to go Manuel Gonzalez. I do think he's got that experience now in the class. He's there or thereabouts in terms of pace, and he's very consistent. You don't see many mistakes from Manu, so I'm going to go him as an outsider. If you wanted me, if I'm putting me rent money on it, you're looking at Aaron Canet. But again, can Aaron Canet actually get it over the line over the course of a 2025 Grand Prix season? It's going to be very complicated. So I'll tell you what, I'll put it in short, Manuel Gonzalez. And right back at you. What about you?
Tough one. Aaron Canet is the bookies' favourite, and it's understandable why, given his record last season in Moto2 and his run in testing. I'm going to foolishly go against all of that. For the second season in a row, I'm going to go for Celestino Vietti to win the Moto2 World Championship. I went for it last season, in large part just the fact that he moved to Red Bull KTM IO, and generally when you move to Red Bull KTM IO, you do that to win championships, as Pedro Acosta, as Remy Gardner had done before him. But now with the speed-up team, a lot of this is hinging on the Boscuro working as well as it did last season. Kalex are certainly hoping that that is not the case. Kalex certainly hope that they have regained their dominance over Boscuro in Moto2. But if the Boscuro is the motorcycle to be on again this season, for me, Celestino Vietti is the rider best placed to take advantage of that.
He's got to be, and because he ended last year very, very strongly, and he had plenty of other flashes. So, yeah, for me, Celestino is one of the others. The reason I just moved over to Canet is just because I think he's got the most experience, the more pace than anyone else. I just don't know whether he will be able to, on those weekends where he should be P1 in his P4, can he contain it? Can he get the points over the line instead of getting the bike over the white line and in the gravel trap, if you know where I'm going with that. Whereas Manuel Gonzalez, maybe it's not going to be the average. When we look back at 25, his average per race points aren't going to be very high, but there's going to be more races to take, more Grand Prix to take the points of the average. I think Gonzalez is going to be right there on the podium in the top 4, but maybe not winning everything.
Well, as we saw last year, consistency really did propel Gonzalez up to 3rd in the World Championship. Took 1 victory last season. In terms of podiums, just the 5 of them last year across a 20-round season. But the consistent churning away of top points finishes was enough for Gonzalez. And some of the other up-and-down riders whose highs were higher than Manu Gonzalez, but their lows were considerably lower, saw them miss out on a place in the top 3 in the World Championship. Sergio Garcia is as good an example as any of that. And of course, as mentioned, we wish Sergio Garcia well as he's recovering from injury that he sustained when he broke the 4th metacarpal on his right hand at the Red Test. Incidentally, worth pointing out, his place this weekend is being taken by MSI's Moto2 challenger from last season, Oscar Gutierrez.
Yeah, and Gutierrez, obviously no shortage of experience over in Moto E. He's done a little bit of superbike stuff as well. As you can see, MotoGP coming out, so it's time for me to vacate the booth, and I'll leave you in the company of Lewis, who is staying, and Matt Burt, who's jumping in. But yes, Moto2 and Moto3, really can't wait, Lewis. I'm really, really excited for it, and particularly here in Buriram, it's going to be hot on track and off.
Certainly will be. Less than 24 hours until the action gets underway. Kiko will be part of your Moto3 free practice coverage alongside Elliot York. Myself and Neil Morrison will be with you for Moto2. And myself and the gentleman just taking his place to my right, Matt Burt, alongside me for MotoGP with Jack Appleyard, who's taken the reins over from Elliot in pit lane, and will be bringing us some thoughts from down in pit lane as we go through the next 45 minutes or so, however long it takes to round up 22 MotoGP riders and get them to pose for a photograph on the start-finish line as we look at Fabio Quartararo's factory Yamaha, which certainly caught the attention of many in pre-season testing in Malaysia. Its performance at the Buriram test here a week or so later perhaps put things into a little bit more perspective as to just how far Yamaha have to go before they're back up at the front once again. But the MotoGP season, which of course has had its official launch in Bangkok, it's had its pre-season testing in Sepang and Buriram. It's now time to go racing for the first time in 2024, although of course we can't start our MotoGP coverage without first of all welcoming Matt Burt, who's alongside me, but also sending our best wishes to our absent world champion.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Buriram. Well, we've already seen the MotoGP stars of the future gearing up for 2025. The Moto3 and Moto2 classes unveiled, but now it's time for the big one. The focus on the present MotoGP superstars. Today's high-speed heroes ready themselves for an historic season over 22 rounds. The greatest motorsport show on earth, thankfully, is back on the road after a winter break. It's great to be back as well for another year of adrenaline, passion, drama and excitement. Trust us, 2025 MotoGP is going to be a hell of a ride, and once you're on it, you're not going to want to get off. Why have we been buzzing to get to Buriram? Well, let's start at the top, and sadly, as Lewis just mentioned, life already proving tough at the top for poor old Jorge Martin. 2025 sadly does kick off here in Thailand, minus the reigning world champion. Injured on day 1 of winter testing in Sepang in early February, and unfortunately injured again earlier this week in a supermoto training accident as he just tried to get some bike time ahead of his much anticipated anticipated factory Aprilia debut here in Thailand. Out for the Thai Grand Prix, and Massimo Rivola, Aprilia boss here in Thailand, recently confirming in the last hour and a half or so, definitely out of Argentina as well. Lewis, given the extent of Jorge Martin's injury after that Supermoto training accident, you feel that Argentina sounds quite optimistic because he's done some serious damage to his left arm.
Yeah, the second injury seems a heck of a lot worse than the first, as much as there was a real air of shock in the MotoGP paddock on the first morning of pre-season testing in Sepang, Malaysia, when on just his 14th lap of pre-season testing with the number 1 finally on the front of his Aprilia, Jorge Martin had that huge crash coming through turn number 2. Massive high side. That came moments after a high side coming through turn 1 on his previous run, which came without any real damage. The second one certainly did do some damage to Jorge Martin. The first of those crashes saw him do damage to his right hand. Unfortunately, though, it's the damage to his left hand in that training crash just 3 days ago, which rules Jorge Martin out of the first race, likely the first couple, and a World Championship defence, which feels doomed from the get-go.
Yeah, at the earliest, we will see the world champion will be at Austin in Texas at the end of next month. He has taken to his social media channels. Of course, the physical pain will be evident for Jorge Martin, but it's the mental blow. Trying to come back from the Sepang crash. These are the quotes, or some selected quotes from the Martinator. The blows are always hard, but when they come one after another, the impact is multiplied. This time they've been especially strong, both physically and mentally, and I meant for the first time in my life I will miss the opening race of the season. He goes on to say, if there is one thing I'm clear about, it's that blows can be overcome. I don't know if this will make me stronger, but I do know that I will get through it as I always have done. The only thing we can really say, of course, is to our current numero uno, is a speedy recovery. We wish Jorge a rapid rehab, and we'd love to see him back out on circuit as soon as possible. A nightmare start then for Aprilia in 2025, but Ducati set to unleash its dream team in 2025. The star-studded lineup of Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez, 8 MotoGP titles together, and they are both hungry to snatch that number 1 plate off Jorge Martin. Stand back and watch the fireworks inside the Red Garage in 2025. And Lewis, you were here most recently at the final winter showdown here in Buriram, the dress rehearsal, I guess you could call it. Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia looking exceptionally strong on what looks like another formidable Ducati once again. But you have to say, coming into our season opener, if you base your judgment on what we saw at the test 2 weeks ago, Marquez is the clear favourite.
Yeah, Marc Marquez was the overwhelming pick when we asked the MotoGP riders collectively on the final day of the Buriram test who they thought would win the championship. The vast majority of them did go for the 93, who has just settled in seamlessly at the factory Ducati squad, having really fought the good fight last season on a year-old motorcycle last year to take a couple of victories through the season. This year, though, he's on the same motorcycle as Pecco Bagnaia, although it is not as different to Ducati to last year as perhaps we might have expected when last season came to an end. So much of the focus from a Ducati point of view through pre-season testing was which engine they were going to run. Were they going to run the 2025 engine or stick with the 24? A decision that was ultimately informed by the 2-year engine freeze that the European manufacturers will be subject to because they're not in the lowest band of concessions, and for fear of having to settle with an engine that they aren't comfortable with for 2 whole years, Ducati will be starting this season with the 2024 engine and of course racing it throughout the next 2 seasons. They'll also start this season on the year-old chassis too.
Why tweak with a winning formula? That motorcycle, that engine won 16 of the 20 Grand Prix here last year. Alex Rins looking relaxed and ready for action in 2025. Of course, so much to whet the appetite ahead of the new season. 9 riders have changed teams from 2024. And, of course, we welcome 3 exciting new rookies, including one who is going to create a bit of history here in Thailand this weekend, Somkiat Chantra. What a moment for him, the first Thai rider ever to race in MotoGP. MotoGP, and he gets to make that first appearance in front of his home crowd as former world champion. I have to get used to saying that, aren't we? Now,
to look for the 63 on my notes.
Yes, 2023 world champion, 2022 MotoGP world champion. Runner-up, of course, last year. Our most recent winner here in Buriram in that wet Grand Prix here last October. I'm delighted to say, right on cue, Jack Appleyard is about to grab a word with the factory Ducati star. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah, good afternoon to everybody at home. What a delight it is to officially kick off 2025. Pecco, welcome to a faster, forward, fearless era of MotoGP. Are you ready?
I think so.
Good, I'm glad to hear, I'm glad to hear. 22 rounds ahead, 44 races. It's going to be a spectacular season. Just give us your thoughts ahead of it all, kicking off this weekend.
I think that will be intense, long, because 22 races are quite long, but we prepared everything and we are in a good shape, I think.
Since we last saw you as well, certainly on the live in terms of a World Championship, a little honeymoon I heard to manage to take your mind away from everything else. How was that?
It was fun, and I had many times to reflect on my mistakes or where I can improve, so it was super useful.
Of course, it's going to be a very strange photo here that the number one in the middle of the photo is going to be vacated. I mean, I'm sure you were like most of us, absolutely shocked to hear the news of Jorge on Tuesday, and I'm sure you want to send your best to him.
Absolutely. It's a shame that the number one is not here, but I just, as a friend, will say to him to take it calm without rush, because his operation was a bit important, so you don't need to come here very soon. Just a good speed recovery, but with calm.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of time throughout the year for us to see the 63 and the number one battle for MotoGP glory. Pecco, good to see you here. Good luck with the photo. The glasses look nice. You look in good shape. So all the best for the new year.
Just to wait.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Jack. I don't think he's going to give you a free set of those shades, but nice try. Set your stall out very on. Great then to hear from Pecco Bagnaia, the 28-year-old Italian, probably still wondering how, after 11 Grand Prix victories in 2024, he still wasn't able to retain the MotoGP World Championship. As we mentioned, then 9 riders in new colours in 2025. One of them in that garage, the Pertamina Enduro VR46 Ducati squad. There's rider coach Andrea Mbino. He looks ready for action, sporting his best Crocodile Dundee impression ahead of the first Grand Prix. Of course, they welcome into the fold a rider they know exceptionally well. He was the original star pupil in the VR46 Academy, and for the very first time he will race in VR46 colours. Of course, talking about Italian Franco Morbidelli, who, you have to say, Lewis, staying put on the Ducati GP24. It was a tough year last year at times for Frankie, certainly not helped by the fact that his entire pre-season was wiped out by that horrendous testing accident in Portimao, where he was knocked out and wasn't really right for the first sort of 5, 6, 7 Grand Prix. Signs of promise towards the back end of last season, but on a familiar package and clearly a team, nothing against Pramac Ducati, but it's almost, you feel like Frankie going home. He knows it's a team run by Valentino Rossi, great relationship, close relationship with Uccio Salucci, his crew chief Matteo Flamini. He says, well, I've known Matteo since I was a kid, he's my superhero. So everything just feels like the piece of the jigsaw falling into place for Frankie Morbidelli to potentially get himself back at the front once again.
Yes, and one of the general trends through pre-season testing was those who moved to, or those that are on the GP24, of course, Frankie Morbidelli isn't switching bikes because he's on the same one as last year, but certainly the 2 experienced riders on GP24s, Alex Marquez and Frankie Morbidelli, super strong in testing. Frankie said right from the day before the Sepang test, he said, the testing now for me is all about just tweaking. It's all about making those little small changes to the package I've got, because it's a refined, known quantity of a motorcycle that won the World Championship in dominant fashion last season. All I need to do is just plug it in and play with it.
Well, of course, one of those 9 riders that find themselves in pastures new in 2025 is Maverick Vinales, leaving the factory Aprilia team, trying to create history. What a unique moment this would be for Maverick, trying to be the first rider in Premier Class history to win for 4 different brands. He's done it for Suzuki, Aprilia and Yamaha. Now he's having a crack on the KTM as well. Let's hear the thoughts of the Spaniard with Jack.
Yeah, great to be able to chat to Maverick, as you say, ahead of a big 2025 where history could be made. But firstly, Maverick, there's a question that all of the fans want to hear. We love the new MotoGP intro, but everybody wants to know, how did you get up there?
This is a TV, how to say?
Magic.
A production. No, I just take a stairs and I go up. Nothing magic.
It was fully Batman style. We've seen you with the mask on before, looking across Gotham. It looked great.
Yeah, it was nice. And, you know, we try to be creative. And yeah, it looks fantastic. Looks different, which is always nice.
So here we are in orange, ready to go. Another year, another opportunity. How are you feeling ahead of it?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling motivated. One of the most important things is that I know that it will be a process in between the good objective and the good results and where I am right now. So I'm ready to put a really good learning process from the bike and then step up to the amazing results. That's why I signed for KTM. And yeah, I'm excited. And at the same time, I'm calm and ready to put that performance.
You say it's a process, but it felt like that final day in Buriram was really important. A big step was made there to get you as ready as possible for this opening round.
Every day I go on the bike, I feel better and better. So it's a matter of and question of putting time and patience and skills, and it will arrive. But I see myself already very close to the factory guys in KTM, so that's a lot from the beginning.
This isn't your first class photo now. You've been a part of the MotoGP grid for a number of years. Do the nerves change, or every year when you step out, is it those same butterflies?
That's the same feeling, same motivation, and just a little bit older, but all the rest feels the same.
Luckily not grey yet though, still got some time.
I will not go grey, I have a good genetics.
Good to see you, Maverick. Good luck this year.
Thank you, mate.
Those greys might be coming though. He's in his 30s now. He's Maverick Vinales. It feels like he's been around forever, doesn't it? And what a carrot being dangled in front of his face. What an achievement it would be if he is to win in MotoGP for 4 different manufacturers. It certainly would rank unique, wouldn't it? As Marc Marquez said, here he is in red and ready to fight for that 9th World Championship. I think this is a sight many fans, many people in the paddock thought they would never, ever see. Marc Marquez, for so many years, a Repsol Honda stalwart, but here he is now then, taking that big decision to leave before that HRC contract had expired, moving to an independent team, a satellite team for the first time in his career, to get that enjoyment back in racing, to see if he still had it to win in MotoGP. Of course, we've got our answer in Aragon last year in spectacular fashion. Further wins in Misano and that classic in Phillip Island after the wheel spin scare in Australia. Lewis, I mean, we have to be brutally honest. I mean, when you look at the bookies, every single bookmaker has Marc Marquez as the odds-on favourite for the championship, not just for this weekend.
For good reason too, given how strong he was here in Buriram at the test a couple of weeks ago. There was a race simulation that Marc Marquez did, which I think set a few chins dropping up and down this pit lane when they saw how quick Marc Marquez was. We didn't have a dry race last year, of course, to compare it to, but it was certainly substantially quicker than anything anyone else did over a long run here at the test. One of the quotes that Marc Marquez said last year that really stood out to me, I think it was after the battle with Pecco in Jerez, when he said, I feel like my second life has started, having gone through those dark times, the injuries and the years in the doldrums really with Repsol Honda. He got the enjoyment back, as you say, but I think it's pretty clear for Marc Marquez now that his enjoyment in 2025 will only come from winning.
No hiding place in a factory team. He has said it himself. You have no excuses. When you have the might of a factory behind you, you simply have to win. You simply have to deliver. Well, he said, despite the fact that he's coming into his 18th season in the World Championship, he's been here, done it several times, hasn't he? But there are still a few jitters, a few pre-season butterflies. You have to say, he looks certainly cool and relaxed down the grid, showing a little joke there with his brother Alex Marquez, who we have to say has been been a big revelation. Mark himself said, Lewis, at that final test in Buriram, which you covered. The big surprise of winter testing was my brother Alex Marquez. Nothing to do with a bit of brotherly love. He said, just impartially looking from rider to rider, not brother to brother, Alex showed clearly on that proven GP24 that he could be a thorn in the side a few races this year.
The best pre-season of his career, he described it as. The tests in Sepang and Buriram. Back at Sepang, Marc Marquez did a sprint simulation which wasn't even as quick as Alex's was. We know how good Alex is, of course, around the Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. It is one of his strongest, but even with that said, he was super strong. What he's discovering is what the likes of Bagnaia, Bastianini and Martin discovered last year. In his words, the GP24 is born for this Michelin rear tyre. The 2023 Ducati didn't quite work as well on last year's Michelin rear, which is also this year's Michelin rear. The GP24, though, right at home on it, and Alex Marquez is ready to profit from that extra grip.
3 winter test. We started, of course, 2025, all the way back in November in Barcelona. Alex Marquez fastest. Alex Marquez fastest in Sepang as well, when we resumed hostilities in 2025, and a close second to his pesky older brother Mark here in Buriram a couple of weeks ago. Now, one rider who's made a big move. He's made a few big moves in his career, and they've tended to be proven right, haven't they? Jack Miller, exciting. Back at home in many respects to the new look Pramac Yamaha team. Jack looking strong on that wise dial. Well, I'm delighted to say we can hear from the Aussie who is with our Jack down on the grid.
Yeah, he is indeed fresh from the new family photo. Little girl Pip's first opportunity to try the Yamaha M1. How did it feel?
Yeah, no, she reckons it was good. Happy with it. She said she just wanted to adjust the handlebar position a little bit further out than she'd like, but no, she reckons she's ready to roll.
Well, that's good news. I reckon we could see Pippa Miller top 10 this weekend.
Yeah, well, she might have a better chance than her dad. No, I'm only joking.
So, Jack, it looks as though a lot of talk about the switch to Yamaha, but so far, things have been going really well.
Yeah, I've been enjoying my time. It's nice to be back in the Pramac family, and of course, this new venture with Yamaha, it's a whole heap of fun, and I'm just enjoying it.
Does it feel like a new lease of life?
A little bit, yeah. You know, it's something different. It's just all fresh. Obviously, working with Giacomo Guidotti as well. It's just something different. So I think change has been good for me.
I'll let you go get on the grid. I think they're calling for you. Good luck.
Thanks from one Jack to another Jack. Yeah, Jack Miller has caught the eye on that Pramac Yamaha. Of course, 2 less Ducatis on the grid in 2025, with the Pramac team fresh off the back of their historic achievement, the first independent team to win the MotoGP World Championship. Obviously now moving to Yamaha, strengthening the Iwata factory's presence in MotoGP. Of course, the factory duo unchanged, Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins. Jack Miller joined by Miguel Oliveira in that new look Pramac Yamaha squad.
Looks to be a fly on the wall in this conversation. Marc Marquez, who, as you say,
all
just
smiles now, isn't it?
Uber relaxed, doesn't he? Pecco Bagnaia, who, it's fair to say, did not enjoy his test here anyway near as much as Marc Marquez did. But don't let that fool you into thinking that Pecco Bagnaia isn't going to be in the battle for the title this year. He knows that he faces the biggest challenge of his MotoGP career this year. No two ways about that. Going head-to-head with the greatest rider of his generation, Marc Marquez. But it's a challenge, to be fair to Pecco Bagnaia, that he is not shying away from, and he's actually relishing the challenge. Of course, 2 world titles in MotoGP to his name. If he can beat Marc Marquez head-to-head this year, then Pecco Bagnaia cements himself as one of the greats.
Yeah, they've already had a couple of flashpoints. Think back to Portimao and Jerez last year. Bagnaia is not shy to go toe-to-toe with the uber-aggressive Marc Marquez. Such a shame. A crying shame. Your heart really does go out to poor old Jorge Martin, who should be sitting proudly on top of that factory Aprilia RSGP with the #1 plate on the fairing. A #1 that he said, of course, he was always going through it. There was always that debate, wasn't there? Will he run #1? Will he stick to a traditional number 89? He said it was never in any doubt. Do you think I've spent 20 years of my life shedding blood, sweat and tears to win racing's biggest prize, to fulfill my boyhood dream, and then not run the #1 plate?
He was never going to make any other decision than the one that he took. And of course, you'd imagine Aprilia would have been very keen for the #1 to be put on their motorcycle too. Of course, an all-new lineup for Aprilia's factory team this season, with Marco Bezzecchi up alongside Jorge Martin when Martin is back from injury. And Bezzecchi really did put in the hard yards for Aprilia at the Buriram test. Did a stunning job for the team, and Aprilia have also spoken in glowing terms about his feedback. We spoke with the technical head of that squad, which is now Fabiano Sterlicchini for this season. He said Marco Bezzecchi's feedback is exceptional, even surprising himself in terms of how good it was. So Bezzecchi certainly will be picking up the slack from an Aprilia point of view this weekend, and of course for every performance that he puts in, Jorge Martin will be chomping at the bit to get on that RSGP himself and essentially get his season underway, because he's only done 14 laps so far.
So here are most of the 22-strong field that will fight for glory in 2025. Just a quick recap: Martin, Marc Marquez, Pedro Acosta, Marco Bezzecchi, Maverick Vinales, Enea Bastianini, Jack Miller, Miguel Oliveira and Frankie Morbidelli. There are your 9 riders that have switched teams for 2025. 6 of that 9 have actually changed manufacturers as well. Martin and Bezzecchi, Ducati to Aprilia, Vinales from Aprilia to KTM, Bastianini from Ducati to KTM, Jack Miller from KTM to Yamaha, and Miguel Oliveira from Aprilia to Yamaha. Of course, we've said goodbye to Aleix Espargaro, Taka Nakagami and Augusto Fernandez. All 3 still gainfully employed. You'll be pleased to hear as test riders with HRC and Yamaha in MotoGP. And that means we have 3 newcomers, including Somkiat Chantra, who we mentioned, joined graduating into the MotoGP category with Fermin Aldeguer, and reigning Moto2 world champion Ayagura. Aldeguer and Nagura have caught the eye on more than one occasion in winter testing. It's been a very impressive adaptation for those two as they get set for one of the biggest days of their racing career. It's always an extra special feeling, isn't it? Your first race in MotoGP. It's one that they all dream of.
Of course, Ayagura clinched the Moto2 World Championship the last time he raced here in Buriram late last year, and I've been impressed not only just by the sheer lap times that Ayagura has been doing, but just the way he's approaching this rookie MotoGP season, taking it all in his stride, so relaxed. That is just Ayagura's way. He doesn't really get too built up, too intense, too nervous about anything. He just gets on with the job. Speaking to some of the team back in Sepang, and he spoke about not really saying much in a box through a weekend, and speaking to his old crew chief Norman Rank only really on a Saturday night. And Aprilia was saying, well, that doesn't really work for us this year because we have a sprint on a Saturday, so you're gonna have to do a bit more talking in the box. But he's certainly been doing talking on the track as well. He did a race simulation in Sepang which compared very favorably with the best we saw from any Aprilia at the corresponding race last year. He is a ferocious talent, and it looks like Trackhouse chose wisely when they were plucking a rookie out of Moto2.
So 21 riders minus 1, unfortunately, and it is the number 1 that is sadly missing for at least the first 2 Grand Prix. We knew Jorge Martin would be missing this weekend in Thailand, and after a media debrief earlier on this afternoon here at the Chang International Circuit in Buriram, Massimo Rivola, Aprilia boss, confirming Jorge Martin's left upper limb injuries will also keep him out of our return to Termas Trio Hondo in Argentina in a couple of weeks' time. 22 rounds, 22 Tissot sprints, 22 Grand Prix, 814 points these riders are fighting for in 2025, of course. Exciting visit to Hungary later on in the season, a return to the Czech Republic, the brilliant Brno circuit on the outskirts of the Czech Republic's second city. But it's all about this weekend's Thai Grand Prix. The stage is set. Just for reference, Jorge Martin is being replaced here this weekend by Aprilia's, I guess you could say, trusted substitute. He's done a lot of replacement rides over the last 2 or 3 seasons. The ever reliable Aprilia test rider, Lorenzo Savadori. You'll think that he's going to be deputising for Martin until he is fit to return. I think the message is loud and clear from Aprilia, Lewis, coming out of the box today from Massimo Rivola. There's going to be no rush. Jorge Martin will only be back on RSGP when he is absolutely 100% back to his physical best. No sense in rushing him back at all.
No, not at all, and particularly given that essentially the first few races for Jorge Martin when he returns will be his pre-season in many respects, given that, as mentioned, he only did 14 laps in Sepang. So you can understand why Jorge Martin will be so keen to get on that motorcycle, not just because he's the defending world champion, but he'll want laps on that Aprilia. But Marc Marquez summed it up very, very well when he spoke to us a little bit earlier in the day. He sent Jorge Martin a message earlier in the week when he learned of the second injury to the world champion, and he just told him to listen to his body. Marc Marquez knows better than anybody the damage you could potentially do by returning from an injury too soon, and he, like the rest of us, does not want to see Jorge Martin make that same mistake.
Well, it was right here in Thailand back in 2019 where Marc Marquez captured the last of his 6 MotoGP titles. Is he on course for the magnificent 7th in 2025? Pedro Acosta, of course, the sensational rookie in MotoGP last season. You get the distinct impression from a very ambitious and hungry young Spaniard that the learning period is over. Now it's time to start the winning. He does not hang around, does he, Pedro Acosta? I think it really gnawed at him last year, Lewis, that he wasn't able to win in that rookie season. Once again, we saw in winter testing, he was the leading light for KTM. Of course, hard to judge at the moment his level against Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini, while those two get to grips with the RC16. But I guess the biggest compliment you can pay Acosta is the vibes coming out the Binder side of Rebel KTM, where the South African is now starting to look more at Acosta's data, because he did that a lot last year, but certainly try and implement some of Acosta's riding style into his own this year, which is a heck of a compliment.
Yeah, given that he's only in his second season, or is about to start his second season in MotoGP, he's already showing the KTM contingent how to ride that RC16. And Enea Bastianini, of course, who's jumping on a KTM in competitive action for the first time himself this weekend, also spoke of looking at what Pedro Acosta's doing, although he's finding it a lot more difficult to train his brain to do what Pedro Acosta's doing than Brad Binder is so far. But as you mentioned, Pedro Acosta has been a serial winner in his entire Grand Prix career up until arriving in MotoGP. Moto3 world champion as a rookie, Moto2 rookie of the year, 1 races, followed by the world championship in just his 3rd Grand Prix season. Last year, the first since Pedro Acosta arrived in this paddock that he went winless through the entire year. He did flirt with it on a couple of occasions, most notably the Tissot sprint in Motegi when he was leading and crashed out of what looked like becoming an unassailable lead over Pecco Bagnaia. He found it a little bit difficult last year to accept results other than victory, but you just know the mentality that Pedro Acosta's got. His patience might wear thin if he has another season where he's on the outside looking in at particularly Ducati riders lifting trophies.
Well, as we mentioned, we lost Taki Nakagami at the end of last season. He is still there, very much part of the HRC development program. I'm sure we'll see Taka wildcarding at some point in 2025. But good news for Japanese fans. They still have big interest in this year's MotoGP World Championship, with Ayagura moving to track out Aprilia. And just what a special weekend it's going to be for Somkiat Chantra. I believe LCR Honda are having to hire personal bodyguards for Somkiat this weekend, because he's not going to be able to walk a millimetre in or out of this paddock without getting mobbed here this weekend. Trust us, folks, when we say he is the ultimate local hero. He has such huge status, such support here in Buriram. There's going to be a capacity crowd here on Sunday to witness a moment of Grand Prix history. Never before has a Thai rider ever raced in MotoGP. That's not a bad little thing to have on your CV, is it?
Yeah, the stars have aligned for Somkiat Chantra this year to move into MotoGP, but to make his debut of all places at the Chang International Circuit in Buriram. We know very well from his Moto2 years just how excited this crowd gets when Chantra is in battles on circuit, and that was in Moto2. Just imagine the national pride that must be felt across Thailand, with thousands upon thousands of them making their way to Buriram this weekend to see their hero on the MotoGP grid for the very first time. It's impossible to really put into words what must be going through Somkiat Chantra's mind right now. A sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride, not just in himself, but in his country. But of course, from tomorrow, he's going to focus on the job at hand. And boy, is that a tough job, being a MotoGP rookie on board the Honda, which still appears to be the motorcycle with the most work to do to catch up to the front.
Yeah, it's the hottest ticket in town here this weekend, the hottest ticket really in world sport, the season opener for the MotoGP World Championship. And boys are going to be hot here in Buriram this weekend, where obviously traditionally come as part of our Asia Oceania end of season swing to Thailand, but the season opener for the first time in history comes from the Chang International Circuit. Certainly the drier season, the hotter season here in this part of the world. Temperatures predicted for the weekend not far shy of 40 degrees, around 37, 38 degrees or so. So there you go, folks. There is your class of 2025. Sadly, we are missing the reigning world champion, Jorge Martin. As we mentioned, we wish him a very rapid and speedy recovery from his injuries. That's the photo opportunities then completed. MotoGP 2025 is officially open for business, folks. We're underway bright and breezy at 9 AM local time tomorrow morning. Moto3 with the green light for MotoGP FP1 at 10:45 AM. The Sprint and Grand Prix for MotoGP kick off at 3 PM local time on Saturday and Sunday. All that's left for us to say here in the commentary box and from our crew and team here in Thailand is best of luck to all riders and teams, and from myself, Lewis, Jack and the team, have a fantastic, have a brilliant 2025 MotoGP season. It is going to be some roller coaster. Enjoy the ride, folks. We'll see you for all the action tomorrow. Goodbye for now.